All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Jason DeFalco, Superintendent at BMR, and thank you so much for joining our leadership team for tonight's conversation around our spring of 2024 Mcas and accountability results. We are excited to be here to share some of our good news and to share our focus areas and next steps with our school community this evening. Tonight, I am joined by our very talented team. And I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself. Jill, PG, I'll start with you.
All right, Jill Pillagallerani, the Assistant Superintendent, Director of Student Services.
Thanks, Jill. How about Jill F?
Jill Fowlis, Principal of the high school, 8 through 12.
Jenny?
Jenny Rumpka, Principal at the middle school. 4 to 7.
Thanks, Jenny. Christina.
Christina Schaefer, Principal at Millville Elementary, Pre-K to 3.
And last but certainly not least, Mary Colanino.
Mary Colanino, Lead Coach, Office of Teaching and Learning.
Excellent. Thanks so much for being here tonight, members of our team, and of course, to members of our community. So the way we've structured our conversation, and we truly hope it's a conversation, even though it's a virtual meeting, those of our family and friends at home will have an opportunity to send in your questions to Jesse, who's running the live stream, and he'll send those along to us as we work through our data tonight. So essentially, the framing of our conversation is going to look like this. We are going to start by walking the community through a data sheet that looks at how BMR did in a couple of different ways as far as our student achievement and growth, both in ELA and math, but also in science for the grades where we test science. We're going to look at our 2024 results compared to how we did in 2023 in our various achievement levels. And again, those are exceeding expectations, meeting grade level expectations, partially meeting, and then not meeting. In addition to looking at how we did in comparison to 2023, we are going to look at our 2024 state averages. This will be really important because it will give the community a good snapshot about how we did compared to ourselves from the previous year and how our students did compared to their peers across the state. So we look at a multitude of data points, as you can imagine, both at the leadership team level, which is comprised of the individuals on our meeting this evening, but also members who are not here, like our assistant principals and our 2 instructional coaches, and members of each of our instructional leadership teams, which each of our schools have in place. Those are comprised of different staff members, classroom teachers, support staff, etc. I should also mention that we all have, in one way or another, a student instructional leadership team. And they have conversations with the principals and our educators around student performance data on a regular basis. So we do have data conversations at varying levels. And we look at the data, not only the ways that we're going to look at it this evening, but we look at it at a much deeper level as we get closer to the schools and classrooms, as far as specific standards, strands, right? So a strand might be algebra, might be geometry, number sense, measurement, et cetera, within mathematics. So we look at those strands. We look at our student performance and our overall classroom performance. That helps us identify patterns and trends that are emerging that could be an issue that has come up in our curriculum. There could be some additional instructional support we need. And for some students, it might just need, additional time on learning or reteaching or pre-teaching with certain skills. So we do a lot with this data. And of course, during the course of a school year, there are a lot of other data points that we're looking at to give us real-time feedback. We like to look at MCAS as kind of that end of the year. It's sort of an autopsy, if you will. We look at it at the final end of the year in terms of how the kids did. We don't get our results until the summertime. And so there's not a lot we can do with them in the moment because when we get the results, the kids have already left for summer. But there's a lot we can do with the planning in the fall, which we've done, and we'll talk about a little bit more this evening. So with that framing, I'm going to share my screen, and bear with me one moment. I'm going to ask Jill PG to kick us off and look at our first grade span of grades 3 through 5.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Falco. So just to clarify again, I know Jason talked a little bit about how we look at the MCAS, a lot of different views on it from a lot of different groups and individuals in the school. But, we look at it district level, school level, grades, then we get into subgroups and also individual students. So again, this is going to be an overview of what we're seeing in comparison. So I'm going to start off with our 3 through 5. And again, you can see the categories that are listed under each grade, the performance categories. Again, E, meeting exceeding, M, meeting, PM, partially meeting, and M is the not meeting. So let's start looking at our grade 3. Remember, in grade 3, it's the first opportunity for our kiddos to start taking our MCAS. So we look at our grade 3, you can notice that some of the sections and the scores are highlighted. And everything you see here, the numbers, they're actually percentages of students, not actual students, but percentages. And we went through, just to make it easier to read a little bit more visually, we have some green. And when you see the green, you're going to notice that in those specific areas, we did exceed the state in those areas. So let's take a look at the 3rd grade ELA. And if you take a look at our categories for the exceeding and meeting, again, 50% of our students in the 3rd grade in ELA were meeting and exceeding, which was similar to our 2003 results, but it also exceeded the state, which was at 42. And one of the things that you're going to see as we go through here, which is actually very consistent across, is when you look at our not meeting students, we have a small percentage of students who are not meeting. It's still an area we focus on, but you'll notice in the 3rd grade for the ELA, we were lower than the state and also lower than we were last year for our 2023 results in the not meeting. It was only 9% of our students compared to the state at 18%. So again, some nice scores here. Of course, there's always work to do, but our 3rd graders are starting off pretty strong. If you go down and you look at our math, you're going to see math was another area that our 3rd graders, again, had nice achievement, good strength there. We have about, 56% of our students in 3rd grade in math were either in the meeting or exceeding. And if you take a look at that and you compare it to the state was at 45. And our last year, I think it was at about 60. So we're a little bit down, but very similar for how our kiddos did in math in the 3rd grade. But again, as our theme goes through, you'll notice our not meeting students, we had 13%. It's a little bit up from our last year, but we still are outperforming the state. Our not meeting is much lower at 13 and theirs is 20. For our 4th graders, so again, nice strong start for our grade 3. For our 4th graders, and you'll notice on 4th grade, you're also going to see it says SGP. That's the growth of our students. You're not going to see that in 3rd grade because it's the first time they've taken it. But in our 4th grade, if we look at our ELA performance, you'll notice in our ELA, our students were meeting and exceeding. We had 45% of our students. Similar last year, we did have about 50, but we're still around there, but we did outperform the state, with the state only having 36% of their students at meeting and exceeding. And again, our not meeting, last year, again, we were up a little bit with 10. Last year, we had 7%, but again, the state was at 19. And if you also look, another score that we look at, besides our exceeding, meeting, partially, and not meeting, is also the growth of our students. And we really always want to, every year, we really look to hit that 50% target. So if you see for our 4th grade, for our ELA, their growth was 51, which that's what we're looking for minimally, is a 50 and above. That's what we'd like to see. Let's look at our math. Can we scroll down just a little bit? I don't know if everyone can see all the math.
Let me go back up for a second, Jill. There's a little delay in my computer, so there you go.
There we go. So the math for our 4th grade, I'll start there with the growth. It was 45. A few more points. We'd like to get up there to the 50, but you'll notice, again, our meeting and exceeding in our 4th grade math was about 48% of our students in math. Last year, we're a little bit higher than that, but you'll notice we did exceed the state, beat the state for our math. And again, that growth was 45. And again, I mentioned it. So every one so far are not meeting. Our students was only, again, 7%, actually came down a little bit from the previous year. And again, the state being at 16 and our fourth graders only 7% for our not meeting. Again, that trend seems to continue. In our fifth grade, and I know there'll be a little bit delay. We'll let Jason scroll that up. So I know that our team with Mrs. Remka and our fifth grade, they've been working at taking a look at these results to see what our next steps would be. Our growth in fifth grade ELA was down. It was at 38 for our overall growth in ELA. And if you'll notice, and you'll see those exceeding and meeting both in red. So 30% of our students in the fifth grade met the meeting exceeding, which is a dip down from the previous year at 49. And it is a little bit lower than the state at 38. But again, the same thing. We had our not meeting. It did go up a little bit. The state was at 16. But again, for us, we really need to, dive deep into that data in fifth grade to find out exactly what happened and what type of quarter turns do we need to make sure if there's any gaps, anything that happened during that fifth grade ELA that we need to address. And again, we always look at it, like I said before, the school level, the grade level, the subgroup level. But what we also look at is our kiddos who might be in not meeting. How do we get them to partially meeting? Same thing, our partially meeting students. How do we get them to meeting and our meeting to exceeding? If we go down a little bit, we can look at our fifth grade math. Again, in yellow, we're not quite at the green, not quite at the red, but you could see our meeting and exceeding there was 37, similar to our 2003 results. And then you can see where the state is as well at 40. So again, some work to do in math. One thing you will notice, though, our grade 5 math, we do want to see those numbers for the exceeding and meeting increase. Our growth in fifth grade math, though, was 51. So we are seeing some nice growth in those kiddos for math. And again, you'll notice that in math for the not meeting, for our fifth grade performance, there was only 5% of our students who were not meeting, which again was a decrease from last year and again significantly lower than what the state has. And then getting into our fifth grade science, which I actually think you're going to see a pattern this year for all our Mcas. We had some really nice performances across our grade levels in science. Here we go. I think it's a little high. There we go. So our science, if you take a look at this for our fifth grade science, we don't have a growth in there, but you'll notice 55% of our students were in meeting and exceeding. And when you compare that to the state at 42, and like I said, I think you're going to see a pattern. I know Dr. DeFalco is going to talk about some of our other grades, but our kids really did a fantastic job this year in science. And again, for our not meeting, very similar to the previous 2023 results with 8%. But again, if you look at the state, we are far under the overall percentage of the state when it comes to the science. So again, we're showing you a part of this. When we look at MCAS, there's so many different points that we look at. I know Dr. DeFalco talked about some of those, but this is not just, these are the only scores. We look at all students, all grades across the whole district for the principals to put together plans with their different teams to determine next steps and what our focus areas are going to be. And Dr. DeFalco, I will turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Jill. Oop. The screen just went blank. Everything still, can you still see that okay?
Yes, it's still there.
All right, my screen is is glitching out on me. But you all can see this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Bear with me 1 second. I'm having some technical difficulties here. All right. Hopefully it doesn't glitch out again. But Jill, thanks for going over. Good grief. Hang on. Boy, am I having some screen issues. Thanks for going over the elementary scores. I'm going to take a few minutes and walk us through the middle school and grade 10 results, and then talk a little bit about our accountability results and what that means. And I hope we don't have any more tech issues, but we'll roll with it. So you'll notice on grade 6 ELA, there are definitely, and on grade 6 math, there's definitely some concerning data here. If you had a chance to watch our school committee meeting on October 10th, you most likely heard the very in-depth conversation we had around this and some of the work we were doing here in grade 6 to really kind of unpack what happened. But I want everybody to pay close attention to the accountability points when we get to that, because although we saw a step backwards in 6th grade, that was not necessarily the case in 7th nor in 8th. Not that we're certainly celebrating, but we did take a step in the right direction. And we'll talk about the targets that we were able to achieve through that. So, but before we get into that, 6th grade, you can see that we took a significant step back from where we were in 2023, both in English and in math. That's why it's in red, is because you'll notice that these state averages, we are far below those. So the yellow represents a state average that we are within 5 points of. Green is an average, that state average that we beat, and the red means that we were 5 points or below the state average. So you can see in grade 6 ELA and in grade 6 math, we took a step back quite a bit from 2023, but we also, in 2024, our current results, we scored lower than the state. So a lot of work to do in 6th grade to dig deep into this data. And I know that Dr. Remke has already been hard at work doing that with her team at the middle school and planning next steps on how we're going to address this. You will notice that our grade 6 ELA not meeting numbers are at 25%. That was the same as the state. You will notice the grade 6 math not meeting numbers were 14% compared to the state 17. So it was lower, which is good. But far too many students in that partially meeting category in both English and math that we really need to get over that hurdle in 7th grade. So remember, these are our current 7th graders. So we have been working diligently with both 6th and 7th grade to help address some of the grade 5 concerns that we talked about and the current 2024 6th grade concerns. Also, the student growth rates were low. They were 34. You would expect them to be between 40 and 60. Between 40 and 60. And your SGP gives you the number, it's a percentile, of students that you outperformed that get the same score as you the last year. So it's looking at that cohort of students and comparing you from one year to the next in terms of how many students you outgrew that had the same score as you the previous year. So definitely some work being done in 6th grade, but also 7th grade, because those students are now in grade 7. So speaking of grade 7, let's scroll down to that. I'm going to do it slowly just so we don't lose my screen here. You can see 7th grade is kind of creeping up. So some important data points to share here. You will notice that in grade 7 ELA, we had a total of 31% of our students meeting or exceeding. Now, as a state, we were at 36. So we were at 5 points lower than the state, which is why we highlighted it in yellow. But if you look at our 2023 results, we were at 20% meeting and exceeding compared to 31% this year. So we did see a nice increase there. We also saw a small decrease in our not meeting numbers. Again, these are percentages having gone from 23% in 2023 to 19% in 2024. State average in 2024 of not meeting students in 7th grade ELA was 22%. So we are below the state average there, which is good. So some progress there. We're going to scroll to grade 7 math. And sorry, it's taking me a bit to move the screen. I don't want to do it too quick and lose it. So again, you can see grade 7 math. We are at 35% meeting and exceeding compared to the state's 38. So we're just a couple of points away, the overall meeting and exceeding numbers. That's why it's highlighted in yellow, because we're just a little below that, but we're within that 5-point striking distance. But you can see in 2023, we were at 27% meeting and exceeding, compared to this year, 2024, we were at 35%. So we saw a nice increase. And you can see our warning rate or not meeting rate significantly was reduced. So we were at 23% not meeting in 2023, and this year we're at 9, which is a huge drop. We also are 10% lower than the state's not meeting rates. So I want to pause here for a minute, because what I want to make sure that the parents and community members that are tuning into this understand, there are some highlights in the data that we want to share, but nobody is resting here and thinking that we've arrived by any sense. And we still have, over half of our students in the partially meeting category. So we've got a lot of work to do. That means the kids are passing the exam, but there's still a lot to do to get them to that meeting or exceeding rate. And then we look from 7th grade, we move on to grade 8. We start with ELA. Now, this is a little bit of a misleading story because it's all in red. It's all in red, again, because we are below the state averages in meeting and exceeding and in not meeting. But we did see a little bit of movement in our 2023 results to 2024. Wasn't a huge shift, but we had 25% of students meeting and exceeding in 23. And then in school year 2024, we have 30%. So we actually saw an increase of 5%. We saw a decrease in our warning rate by 4%. Now, the state results, you can see that we're in red because we came in below the state. So still lots of work to do there. But I want to draw your attention to the student growth percentile. That means that our students did outperform essentially the 50% of the kids that they had the same score as 7th graders. So our kids did show some progress as a cohort, meaning moving from 7th grade ELA to 8th grade ELA. So the red is glaring, which is important, but there's actually a story behind that needs to be shared because there is some progress being made there. Grade 8 math, you'll see that our students performed in the 61st percentile. That's quite significant. That is high. That is considered high growth. And again, if you look at how we are color coded in the meeting and exceeding numbers, we were at 33% meeting and exceeding in math, compared to the state's 39%. So 34% compared to the state's 39%. So we're 5 points lower, but look at the difference from 2023. In 2023, we made quite a shift. So there's some good news there. And I'm going to scroll to, nope, bear with me 1 minute. Screen is glitching again. Okay. Let me go back to, I want to share the science scores, and then we'll get to the 10th grade. Okay, so we are looking at grade 8 science, and there's a lot of good news here for us. If you look at where we were in 2023, you will see that we were at 19% meeting or exceeding. And then in 2024, we're at 35%. Again, nobody's celebrating those numbers, but we are bringing to everyone's attention the progress, which is important. So that's a pretty big shift to move from 19% to 35%. You can see the state average for 2024 was 40%. So we're just 5 points below the state. And then our not meeting numbers, we were at 43% in school year 20 or in Mcas 2023, and we dropped that to 14. So there was a lot of work done in that in science last year to make the progress here. And as a state, we went from having overall grade 8 science not meeting percentage at 20 to our BMR averages of 14. So we are 6% lower than the state. So some very nice progress being made in science. Jill mentioned that earlier when she was talking about grade 5 science, and we'll see some similar trends when we get to the high school data. So nice work on science. And then we look at grade 10. My screen's glitching out again. Thank you for your patience. So wait for my screen to come back here. Okay. So grade 10 ELA, you can see we have a student growth percentile 51. Again, the expected growth is somewhere between 40 and 60, so 50 is the target. Here, we had an interesting story here. You can see that the overall results didn't move significantly from 2023 to 2024 in terms of the overall numbers and meeting and exceeding, but what did move were the number of students that were in the exceeding category. So some nice work in pushing our high flyers. And then you can see our not meeting numbers. We're at 7% compared to the state's 12%. In math, again, you can see that we were at about 42% compared to last year, where we were at 36%. So we showed some nice progress there, but still a little below the state average for meeting and exceeding. And our not meeting numbers, although they went up from 2023, they are just a little bit lower than the state average. And then for biology, screen to stop moving here. Okay, for biology, you can see that our meeting and exceeding numbers were at 50, looks like 53% compared to the state's 49%. So we exceeded the state averages there. Our not meeting was a point higher than the state's, I believe. So there's still some work to be done for sure, but nice to see the progress compared to the state and also compared to ourselves. So when you look at how we did in 2023, we were at 34% the year prior. This year, we're over 50. So some nice progress being made in science across the board. Now, there's a kind of a second part to this equation. The state sets for us what they refer to as accountability targets. And these accountability targets are for our academics, specifically achievement and growth, but they are also for non-academic issues like attendance, graduation, progress with our English language learners, and advanced coursework. So I want to run through these because I think it's important to mention overall how we did by school and then how we did as a district. Now, when we measure the school targets, the targets are looked at for the aggregate, so all students, but then there are targets that are set for our lowest performing subgroup or lowest performing group of students. So both of those groups have targets set. And so you can see that our complex last year, grades 3, 4, and 5, met 58% of the goals that were set for them for all students, but met 76% for the lowest performing. And again, these goals are set by the Department of Education. For the middle school, for all students, we met 79% of our targets. So that was for all students. While, again, as I was mentioning, while 6th grade was struggling, you saw some of the progress we made in grade 7 and 8. So that helped us move toward meeting almost 80% of our targets at the middle school that the Department of Education set for us, for all students. And then for our lowest performing students, we met 74% of our targets. The high school overall met 68% of its targets, but 15% for the lowest performing groups. So I know Ms. Fowlis has been working hard with her support team to really dig deep into those students who need more support, and so that we can help them achieve their targets as well. As a district, we were ranked moderate progress towards our targets, which is good. We're moving in the right direction. You can see that grades 3 to 8, our overall ELA achievement, we only got 1 out of 4 points. A big emphasis here is on writing. We have a lot of work to do on writing, and we have a new writing committee that Mary Colanino is leading to help us work to fill in the gaps with our writing program, grades 3 through 8. Grade 10 got all of their points. They actually met the target that was set for our ELA achievement. So shout out to our high school team for that. For grades 3 through 8 math, we got 3 out of our 4 points. So we did much better in math overall in grades 3 through 8 than we did for ELA. Grade 10 math achievement, we got 2 out of the 4 points. In grade 5 and 8 achievement for science, we got all 4 points. Grade 10 biology achievement, we got all 4 points. So this is some good news, right? Like this is the part of the data that we don't always spend a lot of time talking about. But the Department of Education sets very rigorous goals for all of us. And this is how we're scoring on those goals that were set for us, which is great. Grades 3 through 8, student growth, we got half of the points available to us. Grade 10, student growth, we got all of the points available to us, 4 out of 4, which is great to see. And then in math overall, we got 2 of the 4 points available to us. If we shift down to some of the non-academic data, particularly our graduation cohort number, I want to just call this out because we got 1 out of the 4 points, but this is important to mention because your cohort graduation rate are the students who started with us as freshmen and finished as seniors. We had quite a bit of movement during these 4 years with some students, and along the way, we also know we had COVID in the middle of that. We did lose, certainly not an excuse, it's the fact of the matter. We did have some students withdraw from school. We had some students move that we were not able to identify or locate. We were also able to re-engage some students during this time as well that had withdrawn that then came back. Our graduation rate is still strong. It is over 90%. I believe last year it was 92%. But we didn't meet the target that the Department of Education set for us with that. Our annual dropout rate is just over 1%. We know 1 student is too many, but we did get all of our points. As I was mentioning, we were able to re-engage students that withdrew and keep them engaged with us. So we're happy that our dropout rate is, we got all of our points and exceeded the goal that was set there. We also exceeded the goal and the target that was set for us for our progress with our English language learners. They excelled with their language acquisition. Our chronic absenteeism also, we exceeded the target that was set for us. That's a really important one because we need kids coming to school and to reduce attendance issues. And then lastly, the advanced coursework enrollment, we didn't get any of our 4 points. That's a little misleading. That was because we had a couple of sections of our AP courses that didn't run last year. So those numbers of students weren't in the mix. So unfortunately, we did not get our points there because of that. But we do run a significant number of advanced coursework options for kids through Project Lead the Way and Advanced Placement, which I'm sure Ms. Fallis would be happy to speak to if there are any questions on that. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And to the team, is there anything that you all would like to add before we turn it over to questions? I know that was a lot of information.
I just wanted to highlight, I mentioned before that, we look at districts, schools, we also look at some subgroups. And I think there were a couple of subgroups I wanted to highlight because not only our specialists, meaning our special ed teachers, our English language learner teachers, but our regular ed teachers as well, the work they've been doing with a couple of our subgroups actually in the data when it came to achievement actually stood out to us. So in order to get a subgroup in a certain area, there has to be a specific number of students. So we don't have scores, for example, at the high school because we don't have a number of students in that subgroup. But when I look at the English language achievement, this is for our non-high school students, so our 3 through 8. Our English language learners actually exceeded their target that the state set for them, and our students with disabilities definitely made gains forward. When it comes to the math, and again, this is our non-high school students, for our English language learners, they met their target, and actually our students with disabilities in the area of math exceeded the target that was set by the Department of Education. At our high school, I don't have any scores to report because, again, the subgroup wasn't large enough to report out on. And our kiddos for our non-high school in science, I don't have a subgroup for our English language learners, but our students with disabilities did exceed their target as well. So it's really nice to see the work that we're doing with some of our students who may have some different types of needs, that their performance, definitely shine through. It was really nice to see that.
Jill, did we get any questions sent in from Jesse?
No, I don't see any yet.
So as we're waiting for questions, if our audience has any, other than safety, this is the most important work we do. Our team is relentlessly committed to doing this work and to helping ensure that our students learn as much as they can each and every day. And so, I just want to take a moment to thank the team here, but also the team that's not here, our teachers, our support staff, our instructional coaches, our families who are working with our students at home on their homework, following up with the teachers, staying on top of all of the happenings within the school. It's a lot. As a parent, I get it. There's a lot that parents have on their plates. So I appreciate, the whole team effort that it takes in order to get this work done on behalf of the kids we serve.
So there are no questions coming through at this time.
All right. If there's not any questions, we will wrap up then. But what I would ask, because we're going to send this video link out to our families, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me or one of the members that are on the Zoom directly. We're here to discuss all of this, any of this with you. We are proud of the progress that's made, but we're not anywhere near where we need to be. I will tell you, regionally, we are right in the mix with our counterparts to our north, to all sides of us. Some we are significantly ahead of. So, I would put this team up against any team. The work that we're doing is the right work. And I'm happy to see that we are getting some of our results. And it's going to take more time, more effort, more energy. And we look forward to that commitment and staying relentlessly dedicated to the achievement of our kids and the overall health and well-being of our kids. And so if there's nothing else, we will sign off for the night, but reach out with any questions. We're always here to talk.